Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my Whole of the Earth. Before we kick this list off, there's a few things that I want to clarify. Firstly, this is not my top 10 films of all time, nor is it my top 10 horror/thriller films of all time.
I've merely just set out to recommend 10 movies with the goal being you not heard or seen at least one of them. I've done my best to avoid spoiling major plot points, but my advice would be if a film piques your interest by the description, check it out before continuing the rest of the video. Without further delay, let's begin. Kicking off the list is the 2012 horror film Resolution. The premise is pretty straightforward, but it avoids giving away any information on where exactly the spookiness is going to come from. A father-to-be receives a video email from his estray best friend, and in the video, the friend appears erratic and delusional due to his heavy drug addiction. So our protagonist sets off to find his friend to assist and help kick his habit once and for all.
Mike, it is good to see you. Seriously, I am glad you got to see this place. It's a very special place to me, and you get to see it. I'm happy. Yeah.
You can tell Justin Benson, the director and writer, is self-aware of horror tropes, and the way that the two characters engage with each other is hilarious. With one trying to uncover the bizarre mystery that's unfolding, and the other not caring any less, they are complete opposites, and their chemistry is unquestionably entertaining.
Why would somebody be leaving stuff for us to find?
I don't fucking know, Mike. Who gives a shit, man?
It's commonplace in horror for there to be a character ahead of everyone in terms of being aware and questioning what is happening, and that person is almost always dismissed or considered crazy, but here it just works.
There's a weird record with a story in there.
There's weird shit everywhere, man. There's some weird tires by the river. Why don't you grab that?
Upon receiving a physical copy, I watched Resolution a second time, and I enjoyed it more so than the first. However, there's one thing I have to complain about. This cover is fucking rancid. Like, it just looks so generic. This looks like a low-budget Ghost Rider. I can imagine if you were, in a video shop 10 years ago, no one's gonna pick this and say, oh yeah, that looks good.
Resolution has been compared to Cabin in the Woods by a couple of critics due to their meta similarities, so if you like Cabin in the Woods, perhaps give this one a go. If you enjoy science fiction horror, this one's for you. Written and directed by Brandon Cronenberg, the son of David Cronenberg, well known for his work in the 1986 remake of The Fly, Possessor is set in an alternate 2008, with the story following a mysterious woman who carries out high-profile assassinations by hijacking people's minds and bodies, using them for heinous acts of violence. This is pretty disturbing at times with extremely graphic sequences, but if you can get past that, you're in for a special experience.
I remember Possessor's cover art having an everlasting effect on me when I first saw it. There's just something about it that made me want to watch it. Contrast that to Resolution. I think this is a good example of showing that cover art still matters.
I don't think this one is for everyone though. Possessor can get rather tedious and artsy at times, with a lot of jarring flashes and scenes devoid of much dialogue, but neither of those personal gripes took me out of the movie. Possessor makes you think, and shares similarities with Black Mirror with its futuristic style and direction, so if you're a fan of the series, I'd advise you to check this out. It's definitely one of the slower films in terms of pace, so keep that in mind if you're more in the mood for a high kill count slasher.
I have a car.
No, you don't.
Yeah. Didn't I tell you?
No.
Yeah, well, I got one.
Joyride is a product of its time, with a babyface Paul Walker driving cross-country to meet up with his high school crush. Accompanied alongside him is his bonehead brother, portrayed by Steve Zahn. The two brothers along the way goof around on a CB radio, which lands them in hot water and fearing for their lives.
You got Black Sheep here right in front door with, Mama's Boy?
Can I please get a better handle than Mama's Boy?
I've always known this film to be called Joyride. I've only recently learned that this was actually called Roadkill in Australia and the UK, because apparently the definition of joyride is different in Australia. So in order to make sure that us Australians and people in the UK didn't confuse the two, it was labelled roadkill. But it doesn't make any fucking sense, because roadkill is, the definition is killing an animal running over God knows what. And that doesn't even happen in the fucking movie. So why is it being changed to Roadkill? I think the contrast of it being called Joyride, despite the fact that the film is not a joyride, is what gives it a good title, thus called Joyride. Fuck Roadkill, it can go to hell.
I said forget about it, cuz.
This film is cheesy, dumb, and predictable, and I, for the vast majority of its runtime, love it. Paul Walker and Steve Zahn are a hilarious duo that play off each other so well, with the villain also being menacing and mysterious with a very distinguishable voice.
Candy cane. Candy cane. Anybody out there know candy cane?
Coming in as the oldest pick of the bunch, we have the 1993 science fiction mystery starring the T-1000 himself, Robert Patrick. Based on the book The Walton Experience, Fire in the Sky tells the story of Travis Walton. After a day of labouring, a man vanishes after investigating an anomaly. What I really enjoy about the film adaptation is that we see the fallout of once Travis goes missing. The entire town is skeptical of the men's stories and suspect foul play. Robert Patrick's performance as the best friend left to explain the unexplainable is very convincing, and you empathise with him.
I searched the woods, but he wasn't. There was nothing. They took him.
What really establishes its place on the list is the final 20 minutes of this film. When you actually get to see what happens to Travis, it completely turns the dial up in terms of tone and horror.
The book was written by Travis Walton himself, and to this day he maintains what happened to him was true.
What did they look like?
I guess it's a pretty typical description nowadays. Very large eyes, hairless, 2 eyes, nose, mouth. I didn't see them speak or no change in the expressions. To me, that in the face of all the screaming and the fear that I was projecting, their lack of reaction probably just added to my panic, but
Starring Michael Shannon, Take Shelter is a psychological thriller which really delves into the mind of a man who is suffering from extreme paranoia and schizophrenia, and as a result is constantly plagued by apocalyptic visions. The acting on display here is so real and gut-wrenching that it keeps you invested in whether or not the visions are real or if it's all a delusion. There is just something about Michael Shannon that just nails the role of a quiet man that has just something off about him. You find yourself questioning, if you were in his position, what would you do? How would you cope with the haunting dreams whilst at the same time trying to provide for your family?
Now, the reason I've been having trouble sleeping is these dreams I've been having. A couple days before that, I had a dream that my dog attacked me, and it took all day for the pain in my arm to go away.
I actually remember watching one of Spooky Astronaut's videos, and she talked highly of Take Shelter. That's what got me to check this out in the first place, so if you like all things horror, I would suggest you subscribe to her. I'll leave her channel in the description. Now more than ever, do we need to shine the light on the 2015 The Invitation, because there's a new kid on the block that's just recently come out, also called The Invitation, and we can't let this one get too overshadowed.
A man and his girlfriend are invited to a dinner party by his ex-wife. As the party unfolds, bizarre things start to happen, and our central figure, played by Logan Marshall Green, becomes suspicious of his ex-wife and the new friends that she's made since they've been divorced.
Will, come here.
Hey.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I'm really glad, man.
Hey, how are you?
This is a great tension-induced trip that builds up suspense in the confines of a modern home. Similar to Take Shelter, you find yourself questioning whether or not something is really going on, or is our protagonist overreacting and being completely paranoid. With that being said, the two movies are rather difficult to talk about because the less you know, the better. The The invitation is definitely stronger in the first half, with it hitting its peak at a certain dining table scene. Awesome stuff.
This is the only movie that I've got on the list that I actually couldn't get a physical copy for, which sucks.
So because of this, I'm going to add a bonus wild card to the list.
I remember one night I was browsing streaming platforms and I came across this film, Bug. It was in the thriller section. I went in with zero expectations and I thought it was just going to be a run-of-the-mill thriller, and oh boy, is it not. This movie is fucking insane, and it doesn't surprise me because it's directed by the same man that directed The Exorcist.
Originally, this film had a place on the menu, but due to the fact that I don't particularly enjoy it that much, I decided to scrap it. But here it is. Released in 2006 and directed by William Friedkin, Bug is a psychological thriller starring Ashley Judd and yet again Michael Shannon. The movie mostly takes place in a rundown motel in Oklahoma, centered around a woman who's trying to escape the clutches of her abusive ex-partner whilst also unable to move on from her past and lost child. You know how I said Michael Shannon just has a way playing those silent but also off characters well? Well, if you were to check out both roles he stars in, you'll understand what I mean.
The problem with Bug is that I just found it to be too long. The film's strengths ultimately become its weaknesses due to how ridiculously long the monologues of the crazy lunatics that are included in this film are. Michael Shannon is way more fucked up in this than he is in Take Shelter, so, you know, if you're a fan of Michael Shannon, maybe check that out, and I don't know, maybe check out 8 Mile too, I think he's in that.
Home Alabama! Got a cigarette?
I feel like something bad is going to happen to me. Or I feel like something bad has happened. It hasn't reached me yet, but it's on its way.
Lake Mungo is an Australian psychological horror film that delves into themes of grief and secrecy. Set in the small town of Ararat, a young girl drowns, leaving the family to pick up the pieces. Lake Mungo is rather distinct due to its mockumentary-style storytelling.
I remember when I was 19, 20, a friend chucked this on and I went in completely blind. The first 10 minutes involve police and news channels, which, being someone that lives in the same state that the film takes place in, it was very immersive. When watching the special features, Joel Anderson actually admitted that he sought out real search and rescue divers, as well as police and news channels. So it all just felt so real. Again, being an Australian, living in Victoria, there was no difference. You couldn't tell.
Today with the disappearance of 16-year-old Alice Palmer while picnicking with her family.
We received a call around 6 p.m. tonight of a missing girl, and on discovering the nature of the situation, we called in the search and rescue divers from Melbourne.
They all acted as if someone had actually drowned. In my experience, people that have watched Lake Mungo either love it or hate it, which makes sense. The pace is slow and it can be laughably corny for today's standards. In order to enjoy Lake Mungo, you kind of need to leave your skepticism at the door and just accept the story beats as they occur, but that can be difficult when the movie is trying its best to make you think it's all based on real events. If you can, however, you'll be treated with an intriguing mystery with a particularly creepy moment that'll linger in your thoughts long after you finish watching it.
Again, in terms of cover art, this is so much better. The art style draws you in. It looks unique. It looks interesting. Contrast that directly to the Blu-ray. Dog shit.
Am I not pretty enough? Is my heart too broken? Why do you see right through me?
Released in 2009, The Loved Ones is a twisted, over-the-top horror flick that asks the question, what could possibly happen if you were to turn down the quirky girl to the prom? Unfortunately for our main protagonist, not so well. This movie is up there in terms of gore and outright brutality, but its tone is nowhere near as serious as other films on this list, so it can be a fun one to watch with friends that share a love for horror.
Being the second Australian film on the list, The Loved Ones share similarities with Lake Mungo in terms of it feeling very raw and authentic. It looks like it could happen 5 minutes from where you live.
There's a funny blend of horror and comedy with a side story of a bizarre couple going to prom with little to no incident. It's a morbid contrast to what's happening to the protagonist, allowing you to recover from the shocking violence with some teen awkwardness.
You got any more of that pot on you?
Yeah, in my pocket. That's why your dog was sniffing my nuts.
No need to explain.
Oh yeah, I just didn't want you to think that I have a hygiene problem.
By the end of the movie, you will forever associate this Kasey Chambers song with the twisted demeanour of our villain.
Why do you see right through me?
Started without me, huh?
Starring Shia LaBeouf, David Morse and Carrie-Anne Moss, we get a modern-inspired take on Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. An emotional teenager who is placed on house arrest starts to suspect something isn't quite right about his neighbour.
I'd argue that this is probably the most well-known horror/thriller film on the list, but rarely do I ever hear people discuss Disturbia. I think that's what warrants its place on the list.
Disturbia is a great film to watch if you're heading in completely blind, as the first half is basically a teen drama tackling themes of the loss of a parent and the extreme boredom one would experience under house arrest. We see Shia LaBeouf's privileges get taken away, such as his video games and music, which results in him spying on the neighborhood.
Hey, I got something to show you that is most definitely...
No, I got something to show you. This is reality without the TV. I'm not a stalker. These are just simple observations, natural side effects of chronic boredom.
So whilst trying to obtain a physical copy of Disturbia, I went down to a local thrift shop and I came across this, Extreme Action Heroes. I'm not sure if I watched the same movie because this is not an action. I mean, you could argue that there's action elements.
What the fuck? Was this a mistake? I tried looking online to find out more about the Extreme Action Heroes catalogue, and it turns out that it was a certain lineup released by Paramount. Mission Impossible seems more fitting. The Warriors, yeah, that makes sense. Disturbia? I don't know about that one. Disturbia shares a similarity with other titles on the list that it kind of shits the bed in the final 15 minutes. It just becomes super generic and devoid of any tension, but I think it's still worth a watch due to the shift in genre and Shia LaBeouf overreacting to Ghost Recon.
The entrance. Let me jump on the M60. Cobra's at 3 o'clock. Just get your position and hold it. Just get your position and hold it. Go down to the bottom entrance. Fire. Boom, boom. Got it. Okay. We got that.
Coming in for my final recommendation is the 2013 black comedy horror Cheap Thrills. The film drags you into a night of friends that try to outdo one another through a series of dares.
You the one who hit one of our girls?
No, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. I swear to God.
You lying piece of shit. I'll fuck you up.
Craig, $500 if you hit him first.
Oh!
Running in at only 85 minutes, this film is just perfect in what it sets out to do. It's gritty, it's disturbing, and it just makes you feel gross by the end of it. And if that's not horror, I don't know what is. Without a solid cast, this film wouldn't succeed. There's plenty of horror films that have an interesting premise but can never execute the idea properly due to the fact that there's either a weak script or poor acting.
There isn't much I can say about this one that I haven't already covered in a previous video, but I'll always maintain that this movie is so effective at what it sets out to do.
His name's Keenan.
Wow, Keenan, huh? Dude, he looks just like you.
Yeah. Same hairline.
Wanna have a little fun?
So there you have it. 10 films that I recommend checking out for this October. I really hope that you've enjoyed or discovered a new film that you haven't heard of. And if you have, please let me know in the comments below what films you liked, what films you didn't. So until next time, I'm Wristyplum, and I bid you farewell.